Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Elias Tsakos and Andreia Trigo on the webinar planned for today. We will talk about the egg donation process in general, and we will try and highlight the doctors, nurses, and patients' perspective. Hello, Andreia.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. It's such an important topic. We know that more and more people are considering egg donation. So it's good to talk about it and maybe help some patients clarify some questions they might have and make a decision they feel comfortable with.
Absolutely, and especially during lockdown and COVID situation, I think it's very important for our patients to acquire as much information as possible before they embark on the journey. And egg donation is usually a journey which is following on from previous journeys. Perhaps most of our patients, according to our data, have tried with their own eggs first. They have various failures sometimes or mishaps. And then they understand and realize that egg donation is the only way forward.
Yes, I think it's a very unique point in a couple's journey, because up until then, all the situations were a maybe. They could work, there was always hope. Maybe the treatment will work, maybe the medication will work. So all the situations up to that point, they were a maybe, but when you are told that you need to consider egg donation, the decision is very final. So there is no way around it. And it can be very challenging for couples to be faced with such a final circumstance. So I think as healthcare professionals have a very important role in the way we communicate to patients about this very important step of the journey, and how we can make them aware of what the processing takes and help them navigate the decision process to make them maybe more comfortable with a solution that will ultimately bring them the family that they want.
Absolutely, Andreia. And before we go on, I would like to introduce Andreia Trigo to our audience. Andreia and I, we go back a long way. We've met quite a few years ago in London, and ever since we have worked together closely. Andreia is a qualified nurse. She's also a specialist in fertility and counseling, and she is very active with fertility support. She has a very active presence in the fertility world, and she's well recognized and appreciated by many fertility professionals, including myself, of course, and my team in Greece, but also by many teams all over the world. Andreia is Portuguese originally, but in my mind and in my thought, she is a citizen of the world. She's an amazing person. She is an inspiration for patients and professionals alike. And it's a great honor for me to be able to communicate with Andreia and be able to support our patients with Andreia on my side.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tsakos. It means a lot. And I think this topic is very close to my heart because, you know, I have MRKH, which means I was very told when I was very young that I couldn't have my own children. So I was faced with what we were talking about, this final decision. You know, there's no babies, it's very final. And it's what our patients are faced with after a journey that has probably been already very long for a lot of our patients when they need to consider egg donation. So I think it would be good to tell our patients when it's the right time to consider egg donation.
Absolutely. The right time is a combination of a few factors. In my opinion, and in my 30 years of experience with international patients, the right time is different for every patient. We often speak about couples, but let's not forget our single ladies, those courageous ladies all over the world who are deciding to embark on their own. And they have a very heavy load, of course. So for each one of our patients, it's very individualized when is the right time. The right time may be easier for a 32-year-old with premature ovarian failure, and may be difficult for a 47-year-old who has multiple failures. So I think we have to discriminate, and in our minds, we have to distinguish in our minds and not discriminate patients on basis of their age alone. I mean, today I consulted a very intelligent and very high-flying doctor here in my clinic in Greece who is almost 47. She's had many failures with IVF, and she's still seriously considering using her own eggs, despite the odds that she's very well aware of. So the right time has to be individualized and has to be based on evidence, both scientific evidence, but also psychological and personal data of each one of our patients. And I think as doctors, and this is the doctor's perspective, we do need to be aware of the individualized situation of every patient.
I think when we are thinking about egg donation, it's very different to other options of family building. Because if we think, for example, of couples who are considering adoption, for example, I think there's a lot of people in the world who say, maybe one day I would like to adopt a child. But I don't know if there's a lot of people in the world who are fertile who say, I want to consider egg donation. That just doesn't happen. So when we are faced with the circumstance of considering egg donation, I think it challenges our sense of what is normal. It challenges our sense of identity, of certainty, and of predictability, something that we know should happen, hasn't happened. So I think that might be a factor that makes some patients want to maybe try one last time, even when their odds are not so good, just to close the chapter. You find that that is something that happens a lot, patients wanting to do one last round to sort of close the door.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you. And may I make a little comment here? The title of our topic, which has been inspired by Andrea, and thank you so much, Andrea, for this, is the doctors, the nurses, and the patient's perspective. We do not have a patient on our panel, although we attempted to include one of our patients because of mainly the time wasn't right for many of them. However, we have, Andrea and myself, we have put down some notes from our patients, both successful, thankfully, and luckily, the majority of our patients are successful, but also from some patients who haven't succeeded so far. So we will try to portray the patient's perspective. However, Andrea, let's promise to our beautiful audience that next time we should have a couple of patients on our panel in order to convey their own personal experience and their perspectives. Absolutely.
I think it's really, really important. But we'll try our best today to show what all our patients over the years have been telling us are their fears, their concerns, and what has helped them make a decision on egg donation.
Sure. We also, I mean, Andrea and I, we thought we would be like table tennis style. So if I can ask the questions to Andrea in order to explore a little bit more the nurse's perspective, and then of course I would happily accept questions from you, Andrea, on the doctor's perspective. So what I was always interested in is, you know, as a nurse, you pick up the patients and sometimes patient pieces after they've been to see a doctor. So please give us some feedback. What are the main 3 points in which us doctors fail to communicate with our patients? So when you pick up the patients after they've been to see a specialist, which are the main 3 topics that we need to be more careful about?
Well, I think that when patients go to a doctor's consultation, there is always a bit of time constraint. So patients who are faced with the decision of having to go ahead with egg donation, maybe they need a bit more time to talk about it. maybe all the messages that we are putting across to them that for us are day-to-day messages, they just take a bit longer to sink in. So I would say the time aspect and being able to answer all their questions is important to patients. I would say that allowing them to consider that last cycle with their own eggs is important as well. And then maybe clarifying some of the things that have helped other couples in the past is important as well, because we are not likely to have considered all those things that the couples considering egg donation do. For example, that even though the egg is not yours, there are microRNAs who are secreted by your uterus that will have a say in the genes that are expressed in your baby. So the little things that we can explain about the process that can soothe the fears, because the biggest fear people have is that they will not love the child the same way, or that they will not be able to connect the same way. I would say that's the number one fear they have. So if we can explain in simple terms how the process can alleviate that fear, giving patients time to answer, to respond to their questions, and then letting them still have that last cycle, I would say would be the three key points that patients would like from a doctor's consultation.
Absolutely. In my opinion, doctors' consultations need to be structured, and they need to have a beginning, an introduction, a middle, and an end.
Yes.
In my experience, I find that after maybe 45 minutes to an hour, there's no much value, because patients get overwhelmed by a lot of information and by a lot of data that they cannot reflect upon, they cannot understand fully, and so forth. So, I mean, as a rule, we always offer, for example, a free follow-up following the initial consultation, and this all counts as one consultation, whether we do this online or we do this on site. So the first consultation, in my opinion, has to last for a minimum of 45 minutes to an hour. That has to be followed by a nurse consultation in order to try to identify some areas that need to be looked at. And of course, we do a reflection, follow-up, review consultation at a short period of time. In a short period of time, for international patients, that is usually planned for next day. For local patients, within a week, in order to be able to, again, reflect on the initial consultation. So, in my opinion, it has to be structured. Following the initial consultation, again, we need to identify some areas that need more time. During those review consultations, sometimes the doctor is not the best person to do them. So, you know, more often than not, the nurse is the best person, the specialist nurse is the best person to do the follow-up consultations in specific areas. For example, logistics, consents to a certain extent, needle lessons, organizing scans, and so forth. I mean, of course, you have to understand that we are dealing, I mean, at EmbryoClinic, we're dealing with international patients from all over the world. I mean, you know, the logistics are different to a UK couple, even to a Welsh couple compared to an English couple, to a couple from Manchester as opposed to London, to, of course, various countries. I mean, we've had patients from Africa last week. So again, the logistics is so much different. And of course, depends on what is the local setup of all of different patients. For example, thankfully, we have acquired a knowledge on a network of supporters, definitely all over the UK and in many other countries and cities in the world. But we do have to take into account the local support teams that are available. And of course, the abundance of online support these days. And what I have to stress is that One of the positive effects of COVID is that we've all discovered that we can do most of our work online, and that we don't have to drag our patients down to the clinic with all its associated cost and hassle and time for a 10-minute discussion when we can easily do it online.
I think it's a great point you've made, that patients are given the follow-up, because that first consultation, they can receive so much information that, like you said, it can be overwhelming. So giving them the option to think about it overnight, process it, maybe they will come up with different questions the next day that they didn't get the chance to ask because they didn't remember to ask them in that first consultation. So the follow-up is quite important. I think for a lot of our patients, a really important question for them would be, what is the process like for the donor? Where do these donors come from? And what motivates the donors to donate their eggs? It's not an easy process for them. And then what is the process like for the couple or the woman, the recipient?
Okay, absolutely. The process for the couple is very simple. It's consultations, 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 counseling, counseling, and decision. So in my opinion, I think we need to spend a lot of time, and I think our patients deserve a lot of our time in order to understand the implications and in order to understand that egg donation is right for them. Also, it is important for us to identify areas that we need to provide extra information and extra support. Mm-hmm. So number one message, if you like, for our patients is that don't rush into egg donation. I mean, our IVF patients are used to be rushed into IVF because of the AMH dropping and because of the ovarian reserve dropping and all that. With egg donation, in my opinion, I think we should encourage the opposite. You know, take it easy, you know, reflect, take a bit of time before you embark, make sure that this is what you want, make sure that you've explored all the possible implications before you move on. So once the decision is made, then of course you can move forward. Usually we have streamlined the process at EmbryoClinic in which we only require 2 visits to the clinic. One initial visit for all the initial consultations and pre-IVF testing. We can squeeze everything within a couple of days, even for international patients, and we do weekends also. During that time, we spend about 4 to 5 hours, possibly a couple of hours with a doctor and 2 hours with nurses and counselors and psychologists and so forth, and embryologists, of course. And during that time, the patients deposit the sperm if they're using husband sperm, and they go away. Following that, we have the selection of the donor. Egg donation in Greece is legal and regulated. We use anonymous egg donation, as most of the European countries are, which means that there's anonymous egg donation available, and that increases the availability of egg donors. By law, the age of egg donors can be between 18 and 35. However, in our clinic, we only use egg donors under the age of 30, which is giving us an edge with regards to the success rate and the quality, of course, of the service. So following this, we have the matching of the donor, stimulation of the donor in absence of the patients, and creation of embryos, which are blastocysts, day 5 embryos. We have done lots of audits over the last years in order to identify the best possible program and protocol, and we have identified that the best in terms of success, quality, and also experience is the usage of fresh eggs from the donor, frozen thawed sperm from the husband or from the sperm donor if that's indicated, and the use of frozen thawed blastocysts. By using this protocol, then once the blastocysts have been created, we don't have the egg donor into the equation, if you like, and then we focus on the needs and the care of our recipients.
And does that mean that because you're choosing a very young egg, your chances of success are much higher than normal IVF if you are, for example, above the age of 38?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's no comparison because if you compare, I mean, There's a lot of benefit into that. It's not just the actual chance of IVF, which is probably roughly double compared to your age group, to the age group that you mentioned. It's also the experience, because the psychological impact of, embarking on a possibly successful cycle is much more important, in my opinion. And also the outcome of pregnancy itself. I mean, the miscarriage rate in egg donation cycles is much lower if it's compared with own egg cycles.
And you mentioned that in Greece, donation is anonymous. Does that mean that couples are not able to choose the characteristics, or you match them for them? How does the process work? Because a lot of patients might want to have donors that are similar to them or have a certain hair color or eye color or height.
Sure. Thank you so much for the question. I mean, anonymity has nothing to do with matching. Anonymity has got to do with the donors being identifiable for social reasons by the recipients, or the offspring, the child that is born after the process, whether they would be able, for social reasons, to contact their donor. This is what anonymity is all about. And it doesn't mean anything with regards to matching. I mean, matching is could be 100% compatible based on physical characteristics, genetic characteristics, and psychological characteristics. And of course, sometimes we do have some particular requests as well, which we can match. Having said that, of course, it is not possible to provide with any identifiable information. So there's no, photographs or more details that may lead to identification of the donors possible. And frankly, in this process, the clinic, in a way, is the guarantee that the matching is done to the recipient's request. I mean, sometimes we have some requests which are not, what we would expect. We had a tall recipient requesting a shorter egg donor. I mean, this could be accommodated because it's sensible and logical if this is what is the wish, or the vice versa. We've had short recipients requesting a taller donor because they've had, some problems at school because of their short stature and all that. So, we can accommodate reasonable requests as long as they're legal and they're not breaching the anonymity.
And in terms of regulations and the law around egg donation, I think it's important to clarify that the donors have no responsibility, legal responsibility whatsoever towards the child. They will not be named in the birth certificate, so legally there is nothing connecting them to the child.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, because I was around when the regulations in Greece were implemented. I mean, the discussion is endless as to what is best, to be honest. So, I don't have any strong views as to what is better and what is not. For example, as you probably know, in the UK, egg donation is not anonymous. However, what is a fact is the fact that with anonymous egg donation, there's more availability of donors. And I think this is one of the reasons why there's not so many available donors in the UK. And perhaps that's why in continental Europe, including Greece, there is a very good availability of egg donation. And this is mainly, in my opinion, due to the anonymity.
And do you find that a lot of couples have to think about whether to tell or not to tell the child about being born from an egg donor? Is this something that you talk about with your patients?
Yes, we do. and we do have a special counseling session based on that. And if I can interrupt here, I think we have a couple of questions which we can pick up in a minute with regards to this issue. Again, this is an endless discussion. In my opinion, the best person is the counselor in order to identify the individual circumstances and characteristics of every couple. I don't think, I mean, we're not ambitious enough to claim or state that we are covering that 100% before the process. We touch upon it, but in my opinion and my experience, most of the couples, they are dealing with this long after the egg donation and sometimes long after the success. However, it is an important issue, and in my opinion, it has to be individualized and it has to be approached individually by qualified professionals like counselors or qualified nurses. I think we have a couple of questions on basis of that. What if I somehow manage to conceive a baby naturally with my own egg after having a baby with a donor egg? Could I love the baby that's biologically mine more than the other? Do children born from a donor egg resent a sibling born with a mother's egg? Absolutely, this is the complexities. And thank you so much, our anonymous attendee. Thank you so much for this stimulating question. You know, we need to dedicate lots of counseling sessions in order to explore all of that. But what I have to say very simply here is that the majority of our patients, if not all of them, they don't distinguish or discriminate their children. Most of them forget the genetic origin to an extent that they you know, there's no difference in the outcome. And also, please do not forget all the bonding that has to do with, and it's not just the genetic bonding that Andreia Trigo very correctly mentioned about the microRNA transfers. It's not just the genetic bonding, but it's the experience of initiating the creation of this baby, the experience of pregnancy, of childbirth, of breastfeeding, and so forth. So in my experience, I can't remember if I've ever seen any distinct difference in dealing with an egg donation child and the natural genetic child. And may I add here this point, we've had a lot of couples, and we do treat, and I'm sure most of my colleagues and fertility specialists all over the world, we have huge experience of treating through IVF. I mean, you have a 40-year-old couple, they're achieving a natural pregnancy, and then at 44, 45, 47, they resort to egg donation to have a second child. And it's very common. Couples with secondary infertility, it's very common for them to resort to egg donation, and they have no difference in how they approach their children. However, this is something to be explored further.
Yes, I think that is one of the most common questions we get. Will I love my baby as if he was genetically connected to me? But like you said, I think all those fears tend to go away the soon you have your baby in your arms. And it's all about, not only about the genes, like you said, it's all those things that make a human being. When you bring a human being into the world, you are giving them your values. Children pick up the way you speak, pick up the way you use your hands, the way you walk, your likes and dislikes about food. So there's so much more than our genes, and children will pick up all of that. And it's not uncommon for people to say, well, your baby looks so much like you. And even people don't know that the child may not be genetically connected to you, but because children pick up all those things that are not genetically determined, they pick up the way you smile, all of those things, and the fear usually tends to go away. But it's a very, very common fear, and it's absolutely normal to ask yourself that question and allow yourself the time to explore, like you're doing here today with this webinar, maybe speaking with other people or other children who were born through egg donation. And usually these fears are part of the normal process of grief. It takes time, but it's normal that after a while you will start considering that this might be an option for you. And we have here another question. Is there a good time to tell the child that it's born from donor egg? And do they often want to know more about their egg donor? What is your experience in this?
I'm very sorry, I didn't hear that connection.
That's okay. There's here a question. Is there a good time to tell the child that is born from egg donor? And do they often want to know more about their egg donor?
I have no answer to this. I'm sorry. I think it's individualized and it's outside my expertise. I think it depends on the individual circumstances and the individual families, and this has to be explored individually as well. So I'm sorry, I have no answer. Yeah, I mean, our administrator is actually waving. If you don't mind, Andrea, let's take the questions at the end. So if we can continue our exchange, and then we can always pick up the questions at the end. So my question to you.
Yes.
After, I mean, the biggest fear is failure. And of course, in our opinion, and we've discussed that many times, failure is not the actual failure of the process. It's not the actual negative pregnancy test. It's the failure of having a good experience, a good and positive experience. How do you handle failure as a nurse, fertility nurse? And what would your advice be to a couple? Firstly, there's two types of scenarios here. A couple who've had a negative and a couple who've had a bad experience. Let's start with a couple with a negative result.
Who had a negative result after egg donation?
Yes.
So it's challenging because people who are considering egg donation are people who are likely to have had a long journey already and probably have had a lot of negative experiences already, and that of course affects their emotions. It may make them more anxious or more depressed. So having another negative when they thought that their chances were much higher can be really, really challenging for them. So on my side of things, what I like is to have a discussion potentially in a multidisciplinary approach with the doctor, with the counselor, and with the patient to explore what has happened, what might have contributed to this negative result, and is there anything that we can change to go ahead with the second cycle, maybe something different in terms of the donor or the sperm or whatever might have contributed, so that they are still open to considering cycle number 2. So I think having a thorough analysis of what might have happened can help them manage their emotions and maybe be a bit positive and hopeful that one cycle being negative doesn't mean that all cycles will be negative from thereafter. And the second, what was the second situation? Was a patient with...
A patient who had a bad experience.
A bad experience, yes.
And bad experience, may I clarify a little bit? Yes. Because this is a definition that we use it amongst our team, and of course with Andrea and with the rest of the team. Most people define success as a positive pregnancy test. Mm-hmm. We define success as a positive experience, which means that you could have a negative pregnancy test, but having had a positive experience overall, during which you felt supported and you felt everything was done and you felt that the staff were supportive and no details were overlooked or whatever. This is a positive experience through a failure of IVF itself. And equally, you could have a positive pregnancy test and the pregnancy and even a healthy birth through a very bad experience. So we try to discriminate, and in our opinion, in our team's opinion, and of course Andreia Trigo shares this view, I'm sure, we aim firstly at a good experience, positive experience. Because through a positive experience, the couple or the single patient, the single lady, are empowered to handle all possible circumstances and mishaps. We often treat women to which we quote 5 or 10% success rate. I mean, I've just now had a message. I was a little bit looking on my other screen a few minutes ago by a lovely doctor patient of mine in the north of Greece who just delivered, and she was quoted single-figure success rates. Because this is the challenge. The challenge is to support our patients who are aware that the odds are against them. So how do you deal with that?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you that success is not just the baby. That's what all our patients want. That's all of us want that for our patients as well. But success is more than that, because this journey is a long journey. They might need a lot of treatment. So success has to do with all the interactions that patients have with the clinic, starting from the moment they find you online, the ability to message you, the ability to connect with you in these sort of events, the ability to book an appointment easily without having too much wait, the ability to get in touch with the doctor or the nurse or the embryologist or the patient coordinator if they have further questions, having their fears and their answers given to them in a way, in a speedy way that they feel comfortable with. So that's what the whole positive experience accounts for. So when a patient doesn't have positive experience, I would say that maybe one of the aspects of this big pie might have failed for whatever reason. But then I also want to consider that patients who are going through this, they have so much going on in their lives, because infertility affects not only their ability to have a child, but it affects their relationships with themselves, the relationship with their partners, with family, with friends, with work. It affects their financial stability. So there's so many stressors around them that if patients are not having a good day, if they are worried about work or about their financial security, and they come to the clinic and they have an interaction that doesn't come across the way they expect, all of these compounds into an experience that is not what patients want or what we want. So that can be challenging. But I think exploring with patients, what is it that went wrong, so that we can make it right? How can we make it right for you now? And how can we prevent it from happening to others? I think that would be the two key points of moving forward in a negative experience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andreia, for this. Do you have any questions with regards to the doctor's perspective? I mean, what do you find most frustrating to us doctors? What do you keep telling us to improve, and you feel that we don't exactly pick up on it and we don't improvise? What would you like? How would you, what areas of our medical approach would you like as a nurse to see a little bit different? I'm provocative here.
Well, the only thing, and I'm not talking about you in particular, I think you are amazing and you have a great team. I think all of us.
Sorry, I'm not talking about us alone, just yes. All the doctors. Because I mean, may I just add here that Andreia is working with some amazing people all over the world, some amazing teams, some esteemed doctors, colleagues, counselors all over. I mean, she's thankfully she's recognized because she's providing her support and expertise to a big number of teams and organizations. So I'm not talking about us. I know we're perfect.
Yeah.
I'm talking about generally, us medics as a whole.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that I can say I have picked up, and not just from the fertility world, from other areas of healthcare as well, is that when we're doing this job for so long, we become really good at doing things by routine. So when we see one patient and the next, everything almost becomes automatic, and we might skip over from one aspect of the consultation to the next, without making a check whether patients are receiving and processing that information. So I would say just making sure that the patient is understanding what doctors are telling them. Sometimes doctors use words that patients don't understand, really complex words. So just making sure that the communication, you know, what we're saying is being perceived that way. But I think in a way that's what a lot of nurses are here for as well. We have a bit more time, and patients seem to feel comfortable asking those questions to us as well. Look, I didn't quite understand this, or can you maybe explain a bit better what it means? And I think it works. It's a group approach, and I think that's what makes it work so well.
So, I mean, I fully agree with that, and I would keep the word group and multidisciplinary, because if I can criticize, and of course I was joking when I said we're perfect, we're very far from being perfect, and we're never going to be perfect. I mean, that's for sure, and this has to be the drive to our intention to get better, a little bit better if possible, but never perfect. I feel that one of the problems of us doctors, and I'm being very critical here, is the fact that we feel that we can do most of the jobs that we're not qualified or trained to do. I think as doctors, and equally patients sometimes, they get a little bit shocked. I mean, patients, they want to hear the answers from a doctor, and they don't very easily accept the fact that we may not have the answer. So patients get discouraged when they hear the word, I don't know, or I'm not qualified, or I can't answer that. And of course, this is stressing us doctors, and they're making us jump into answering questions that we shouldn't be answering. So I think this is one of the biggest strains, especially in the first decades of our practice. I mean, I remember very clearly that it took maybe 10, 15 years, 20 years to get rid of this urge that I had to answer all the questions. So, you know, a little advice to our younger colleagues is that you don't have to answer all the questions. And if you feel that you're not qualified to do it, just say, I don't know. I mean, in Greece, one of our heroes at the moment is the doctor responsible for the epidemic, who made his name Professor Tsakos. He's a national hero because he managed the epidemic with very low resources and with being very honest and very clear by saying, I don't know what he didn't know. And what he knew, and then he found out that what he knew was wrong, a month later he said, I'm sorry, I was wrong because I didn't know then. I think I know now, and so forth. So, you know, I would like, as a message to my fellow doctors, is that, you know, don't be shy and admit if you don't know something. And don't be shy and get people who know a little bit more and who are in better position to advise and support to your team. You mentioned two magic words, Andreia Trigo, and thank you so much for that. The word multidisciplinary and group. We in the medical profession and the public are very familiar with multidisciplinary approach in cancer. Why are we not familiar with the multidisciplinary approach in fertility?
Absolutely.
It's equally a disease. You know, it's a health issue. It's an issue that we're obliged to address and manage as a team. So I think, thank you so much for that. If we were just to highlight our talk today, the highlight would be group multidisciplinary. When I have a failure, I mean, my failure clinic, I mean, I'm dreading to do the failure clinic. I was dreading even more when I didn't have the support team. Because in 20 minutes or in 30 minutes, and in the initial times when I was in Bristol, Norwich, Newcastle, you know, I was dreading to do those clinics because I was on my own. I was on my own because I didn't know. Firstly, there was no luxury of having a fertility nurse or a counselor and so forth at the time. But also, we didn't know at the time that it wasn't our job to do it. I mean, it was our job to talk about why the stimulation didn't go well, or why perhaps the embryologist would explain why the fertilization didn't go well, but that was about it. We had no knowledge about anything else that we were called to do it. And I think that we should address that to our patients, and that should relieve us. You know, the post-failure clinic should include a multidisciplinary approach, and doctor is part of that team, as an embryologist is, as a nurse is, as a counselor is, as a psychologist is, and then again the same cycle.
Yes, I agree. I think we should have that approach even before we get started with treatments, and then when something doesn't go right as well. Absolutely.
And this is making our life easier. This is alleviating our stresses as well. I have to confess here that I'm sure you feel the same, that we are stressed also. Mm-hmm. We are very stressed treating our patients. You know, when I pick up that catheter with the one embryo, that the lady came from Singapore to have one single embryo transfer, I'm very stressed. And yes, thankfully this doesn't reflect on my motion, but it reflects on my eyes. I mean, I've had many times my patients saying, "Oh, doctor, are you stressed?" Of course I'm stressed. And I'm stressed for you because I have to do it perfect for you. And I know when it's perfect and when it's not. So please, our dear patients, accept that doctors and nurses, we are stressed as well as you are. And we're open to be given support. I mean, I have to stress here also that many times I've been supported by my patients, and I thank them for that. They said, "Doctor, you know, we know that you've done your very best. Please don't worry. We accept that, you know, it's part of the game. Failure is part of the game. We know you've done your best. Please relax. It's going to be okay." And I'm very happy to accept that. And thank you for giving me this.
Yes, I remember when I visited you that one of your team members said, "Our patient successes are our successes. And when there is a failure, it's our failure as well." So there is this connection, this emotional connection with patients. And it's challenging because you have so many patients in a day. And when the outcome for one patient isn't going well, then you need to see the next patient and you need to be emotionally available for that patient. So you're right, there is a lot of pressure from everything, but I think you're doing an amazing job, and I think your patients' reviews and experience there speak for itself.
Well, I've had many discussions. I mean, as you probably know, and I'm again self-criticizing at the moment, gynecologists perhaps are not the best doctors in the world, and they're not the cleverest or whatever. And I've been criticized for that by many of my colleagues. I'll never forget my surgical colleagues when I was training in the UK. The way they refer to gynecologists as, you know, glorified technicians and so forth and all that. However, after 30 years, I'm very proud to be a gynecologist, and I'm very proud to be a fertility specialist also, because, you know, by definition, medicine is trying to improve somebody's quality of life, longevity, and life. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud because we move on a step forward. We help, we contribute a little bit into the creation of life. So this is a message to my colleagues, to my high-flying cardiac surgeons, neurosurgeons, you know, whatever. Yes, thank you so much. You know, you're amazing too. But I'm sorry. I think we're a little bit going forward by helping to create this little miracle that's called life. Thank you for your contributions. You know, we need to come out of ourselves and become a little bit proud. And with the help of amazing people like our fertility nurses and the rest of the team, we contribute into this creation of life, which is unparalleled. And, you know, we feel very fortunate and lucky to have identified this career. And I would like to encourage all young doctors to consider this career, because we need you guys for the next generation and the generations to come.
Yes, talking about creation of life, today it's 42 years since Louise Brown, the first IVF baby, was born. 42 years. So it's an amazing science discovery or that happened 42 years ago, and she's healthy and she's happy. She's had her babies already. So 42 years since IVF, so much has changed since then. But I think it's very inspirational for us today to think that technology has helped so many people over the last 42 years to get pregnant, to grow their families. And may all of our teams continue to work towards helping a lot of couples getting pregnant, getting the families that they want.
And if we want to quantify this, Andreia Trigo, I feel that it's something like 7 million children born through IVF at the moment. So this is a huge, huge number of families created. And if we extrapolate that into the future, one can understand how miraculous was this amazing, amazing innovation of fertility and IVF 42 years ago. Now, if we want to go through the questions, because I think we're running a little bit out of time now.
Yeah.
If I can pick up the next question, which is what genetic diseases do we screen for the donor, if any? Yes, we do. I mean, each clinic, each country, they have their own regulation. In Greece, we're obliged to screen the donors for the following. Genetic disease for karyotype, cystic fibrosis, thalassemia, and sickle cell disease, and also Fragile X. So these are the genetic diseases by law we're obliged to check. How much does egg donation cost? I cannot quote figures now online. However, if Shona C would like a personalized quote and also some sort of idea of what's going on in Europe and the world, please email us to info@embryoclinic.eu and we should respond. Next question by anonymous attendee. I'm always curious about if it matters if the donor is university educated or their likes or dislikes. Those aren't inherited factors, right? Are there clinics, doctors that explain about how those qualities, achievements don't necessarily reflect the quality of the DNA or the gamete? Absolutely, yes. I mean, we do get a lot of questions about backgrounds and so forth, but as you state very correctly on your question, and as Andreia explained, you know, it has to do with genetics, but most importantly, it has to do with potential, and the potential is given by the families in which those babies will be brought up. So it's a complex issue that we do touch upon, of course, during our consultations. Okay, any other questions? And if not, can we summarize, Andreia? Please.
Yeah. Yes, so I'm going to give you my 3 or 4 last key messages for anyone who is listening, who is in that point of considering egg donation from the nurse's perspective. I understand that making a decision does not come easily, so take your time. There may be an impact on the relationship if you are pursuing egg donation as a couple, and that impact can be frustrating and confusing because you're both maybe grieving at different times, maybe coping or making decisions differently, and this is a joint decision. So remember why you are in this journey to begin with, what makes you want to grow a family together as a couple. Secondly, I would say speak to other people who are going through a similar journey. There are a lot of groups online of people who have pursued egg donor. So speaking to them will help you understand what were their doubts, their fears, and maybe you will realize maybe my fears are what the fears they had as well. And by talking to them, how the process went, how everything went, maybe alleviate your fears. Third, speak with a counselor or a coach or a nurse or a doctor to guide you through the process, because the fears you have of not feeling connected or maybe not loving your child as much is an absolutely normal part of the grieving process, but it takes time. So speaking with a professional person about your fears and about the process can help you make a decision. And finally, take the time you need. Like Dr. Tsakos said, you're not rushing, so you can take the time you need to redefine what family means to you, what being a mother means to you, so that you can ease your emotions and feel peaceful and make an honest, genuine decision on the matter of donation, something that you are comfortable with. Because human beings are so much more than genes, but you need to get to this conclusion by thinking about what does family mean to you. So this would be my top 4 and last key messages. What are your last key messages, Dr. Tsakos?
I mean, I would keep yours.
Yes.
I think you summarized everything so nicely. I mean, what I have to say is that I've always thought that it's amazing to be a parent, mother or father. It's absolutely amazing. It's a gift. It's a blessing. It's something unparalleled. I don't think anyone can describe this. And dare I say that if couples, if our patients, single mothers, if they knew exactly what the feeling was, perhaps they would be even more motivated. You know, they would be crazy and mad about proceeding even more strongly towards that. It's a unique feeling and it's amazing. I've always thought that the patients and are creating parenthood through hardship, whether it's complex surgery or fertility treatment, makes those people even more appreciative. And I would, if I were to give, you know, rates, I would say these are double parents, the parents who have fought for this. But when it becomes even more complex through failures, through health issues, through challenges, then these people are even more courageous and even more, I don't know, I would say unique. You know, when I see people, you know, getting up and who keep going after a second, third, fourth attempt, after a laparoscopy, an ectopic, a miscarriage, personal issues, financial issues, they keep going, they keep going. I feel ashamed, really, that I feel that I've used all the luck in the world to have been blessed with 2 children without any particular effort. And when it comes to egg donation, these people are even more courageous. That's what I feel. I feel that it takes more guts. And we as professionals, we have to be even more respectful for those people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if there's any more questions that patients want to ask, but if they want to ask a question after this webinar is over, how can they get in touch, Dr. Tsakos?
Yes, please. If you can post, or if you can verbally say your email address, Andrea. Ours is info@embryoclinic.eu. And yours,
Brilliant.
please.
Mine, Andreia at andreiatrigo.com, and you can find me as well on social media, Andreia Trigo RN. And I am very happy to take any answers online or via email and clarify some of the questions that you might have. I do understand that this is a challenging journey, but it's a journey that can be very fulfilling and can finally bring you the family that you want. Sometimes life works in ways that we don't understand, but when you finally have that baby in your arms, maybe you understand, maybe this was all meant to be. So a lot of times it works like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andreia Trigo. Thank you so much, everyone who's listening. Thank you for your amazing comments, the private comments, the messages on Messenger. We've had a lot of comments and likes and views on EmbryoClinic website. For those of you who have just logged in and haven't watched the whole webinar, it should be available, so we will post it on Facebook and social media soon. Andreia Trigo, thank you so much for the inspiration. Thank you so much for your advice and your valuable input. Thank you for supporting all our patients all these years. Thank you for supporting us and our staff over all those years. And let's promise to meet up again on another webinar in September.
Absolutely. See you in September. Bye,
Take care, everyone. Have a lovely summer, wherever you are.